Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Super 8. So, the thing that immediately attracts me to this movie is we have a movie inside of a movie. It's very meta. We, of course, have it where we have a number of kids who try to decide to film this zombie movie. And while they're filming this, all of a sudden it seems that they had gone on to do this at the perfect time because we all of a sudden have a town that's kind of in chaos, in this kind of anarchy, and like the Air Force is being sent in, and people are getting quarantined off, and like there's a lot of a lot of interesting things going on with this town. I think the only thing that really in my mind is just be kind of goofy with this film or connected to this film is I think right around the same time the movie called The Crazies was coming out. And so there was a lot of like hazmat like kind of movies coming in where everybody was kind of being like quarantined off and set away in a certain part of town, and like certain parts of town were getting evacuated, and so on and so forth. So there was kind of like a lot of this same kind of stuff being put into the Crazies movie, or the Crazies as it was Super 8. But I like this. I enjoy this film. We have a monster that really isn't to exactly be seen until the very end of the movie, which I think if you were to have seen this alien, I don't think it really would have made a difference if you saw it or not. But a lot of people would probably feel differently. So, yeah, so going into this, I would say that this is a very fun, very adventurous kind of movie. Where that would land in a grading system, like, I'm not quite sure. But I would have a positive reaction upon this movie. I would say that this movie is a solid, good film, if not kind of creeping to great, and whichever. Um, like this, the only thing that I probably don't like about this film is, of course, we just have it to just be like this slow build of a thing to kind of feed us a little bit of information, and then eventually we get the big reveal at the end. So it's kind of like this almost 2 hour slow build of a film, and I'm like, okay, that's odd, but there's also things about this where you can just say it's like, well, but hey, I find like these kids trying to make this movie, like kind of giving us like forgiveness for any of the parts that we didn't exactly. It was like, come on, let's give us something. So with that said, I think that's all I want to say about Super 8. I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers and have me talk about this film. HBO Max is currently where this movie is right now, so definitely go ahead and check it out. Uh, like, it's very rare to get a kind of meta kind of movie where we have like a movie inside of a film. Kind of brings me back to King Kong's or Peter Jackson's King Kong, and there are certain times or certain things where we have like certain people that are sitting in a movie theater and go inside of a film, and so that's a little bit different. But anyways, like we got like that fourth wall breaking where we're having this character desperately trying to tell these other people, hey, you're inside of a film and you don't even realize it. So, but anyways, let's go and or we have like demons, that's like a zombie apocalypse that's kind of going on inside of a movie theater. Even though it's demons, it still feels like it to me, like it just feels like a zombie apocalypse. But anyways, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we get to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Super 8. If you thought that it was great, or if you never liked this movie. That could happen. People could just say it's like, oh, it's too slow of a film. People could have reasons. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments below. So, with that said, let's go into this film. So, and of course, the very beginning of this film, we are to have a death go on. We start off this film with a company called Lillian Steel Corporation that is to adjust its sign to say there has been 1 day since an accident. Because we end up finding out that Joe Lamb's mother had passed away via this company, this business, this kind of steel corporation. So we of course have a character called Lewis who is to try and talk to Deputy Jackson Lamb, and he's trying to apologize for what had happened, and Deputy Jackson doesn't want to hear him out. He goes on and arrests, of course, Lewis, and just kind of like pushes him out. We all of a sudden, of course, have Joe here who kind of makes his way home, and the deputy is telling Joe, it's like, hey, I'll be back home later. Because Deputy Jackson is kind of being very distant from his son, or Jackson is just kind of really just so focused on his work that he doesn't care really about anything else. So we had Joe and we had the deputy that, of course, or Jackson, that was to have this funeral, and we have a number of people like Mr. and Mrs. Kazniak who are to kind of mention, it's like, well, who's going to take care of Joe? And so immediately they're like, well, like the sheriff is a good man, and it's like, well, yeah, but like he's never really there. So how are we really expecting that this guy is going to take care of the son? And it's like, I don't know, but like they're good people. So and a lot of the guys are kind of at this wake at Joe's house, and the kids that, of course, are the filming kids are all coming around this table. It's like, well, I guess Joe isn't going to want to film this movie with us. And all the kids are just like, well, why? And they're like, well, because like his mother died, like, and this is a zombie movie. Like, it's like, it's not the same thing. But it's like, but yeah, but think about it. Like, he just might need some time. 4 months of time, I guess, because we have 4 months later. So we have these kids that all decide to finally go on and film this zombie movie. And so we have of course Charles, who's trying to get Joe into kind of the filming mood of doing this whole filming of this movie, because he wants to just kind of finish this up to have him go on and put this movie into a festival. And so we go and we have these characters, and they're all to be put to this train station. And so Charles has gone on and spoke to Alice and told Joe, it's like, well, hey, like, this girl Alice is going to take us to this train station, and because like she's the only one who can drive, so like we're going to this train station and we're going to film this movie. So all these kids go on to this train station, and we of course have Joe, who's kind of like the makeup guy and special effects, and we had Alice, who had a hesitation about wanting to work with Joe or do any of this really with Joe, simply because it's like, hey, like my dad wants nothing to do with either Joe or his dad, and so like, and plus also Alice didn't want to get caught like not having a driver's license and driving these guys. So Joe is like, hey, like no one's gonna say anything. Like we're just gonna go on and do this, and no one's gonna say a word. And so Alice is like, well, okay. So they all go to this train station. They all kind of climb into this car. Consistently have a guy named Carrie who almost continues to try to blow himself up because this guy continues to just light these fireworks. And so, like these little firecrackers. And so they just continue to explode. And so these guys are like, could you not do that? Could you just not try to light yourself on fire right now? Like we're trying to film a movie. So we're setting this up. We're getting these kind of scripts to these people, and so we really just have Martin, who's just frustrated with Charles because it's like, hey man, you keep giving me like these new sets of scripts, and like I have so much stuff that I have to memorize. I have so many lines, and so we're having Martin griping about that he has to go and say one more word, I think, that he had done before, where it's like, I love you too. And Martin's just like, well, yeah, like, that's 4 letters. Or that's 4 words. Letters. Today is sponsored by the word, huh? Duh. Anyways, so Martin's saying it's 4 words, and, like, that could be challenging to memorize it all. And Charles is like, really? So just we'll give you the lines. If you fudge it up, we'll figure something out. So we have, of course, Alice playing Martin's love interest here because she is also going to play a role. And so Joe is kind of putting the makeup on Alice, and so it seems like these characters are getting like weirdly uncomfortable with one another, that it seems like they're eventually someone's going to be at some point like getting a relationship of sorts between these two. But like you would have thought it would have been nice if they would have at least kind of like peck on the cheek or something nice, but like, oh well, it is what it is with this film. So but it just, they have like this kind of like this way about both of them, like around one another. It's kind of chemistry or something close to that. So anyways, we have both Alice and have both Joe kind of talking, and kind of talking about Joe's mom, and that Alice is mentioning, it's like, well, yeah, my dad used to work with her. Just kind of this like recapping of, if we don't understand who people are, like we'll eventually get to know them more once we get further into this film. So Charles is kind of like, hey, like, quiet on the set, let's roll. So because they're rushing this because all of a sudden there's to be this train that's kind of making its way by, and Charles is like, "Oh my god! Like, this is perfect. We need this anyways." So all of a sudden the train starts whooshing by, and so Charles is telling both of these two to just talk really loud while the train is going by, so they can kind of pick up what they're saying. So all of a sudden this train comes whooshing by, and so like the guys are, before they actually get the train coming by, we also have Alice who's to kind of practice one of her lines, and they completely buy her at what she's doing. So they're like, oh my god, this girl's gonna be great. Ka-ching, ka-ching, could we say festival winner? Because this girl's like just really good at what she's doing. And you can just kind of tell that like she's very convincing. Uh, whereas kind of Martin just has this kind of approach about him, which is kind of really fun. Because like we have these characters that shouldn't be like acting experts. If everybody is to just be the best at their job, it would just not make sense. So, but I guess people are really good at their job to not be good at their jobs. Anyways, pushing on. So, this train comes wafting by. These guys are reciting the lines. All of a sudden, we of course have Joe who's kind of looking back at this train to all of a sudden notice that this truck is meeting with this train, and this truck is ramming into this train, causing a derailing, causing all of this chaos to where now all of the kids are just running off. They're like, we got to get out of here. And so all the chaos and all the carnage and all the destruction. So we have the kids going back to the site and just kind of looking around to just kind of pick up the camera and try to see if everybody's okay. And so at one point we have Alice who's noticing that there's a thing of like a big thing of blood. And Joe is like, no, like that's fake blood because like my makeup bag was right there. So yeah, like it's fine. So they go further through the train to just kind of see if they can find anybody. All of a sudden, they see this like um, half truck, basic because there's really very little left, and so they're trying to figure out like, okay, who is this guy? Like he looks very familiar, because he kind of has some glass upon his face. They realize that it's one of the science teachers that was at their school, Mr. Woodward. And so they're going on and they're trying to make the assessment. It's like, well, hey, like, I think I had him like in fourth period. Like, I think like we know him. So it's like, hey, so if we're going to try and help him here, at least he's familiar to us and vice versa. Because we're going to try and help him out here. So they start like thumbing through this guy's truck, assuming that he's dead. And so they find the map and they see this train like schedule that this guy is to follow to. And so like, oh my god, was this guy like following this train? What was going on? So all of a sudden we have Woodward who's kind of waking up, and all of a sudden he has like a gun in his hand, and Woodward is telling these kids, hey, don't tell anyone about this. Don't tell like a soul, or you're gonna die. They're gonna come after you. And so the kids are like, okay, whatever that cryptic message means. Hey, what's this white Rubik's Cube? Because, yeah, we go on. We have these kids go and find these white Rubik's Cubes, as they are to call it, which we find is the Argus Cube, is what it's described as in the Wikipedia somewhere. And we find out later in this film that this cube, when combining all these cubes together, forms this ship that the alien is to come off on. We also have to naturally assume that one of those parts of the train was to also have the alien inside of it also, and he had gotten free, and he is now wreaking havoc upon the world, and we'll get to that in a little bit, what I mean by that. So, we are to assume here that Woodward has probably put a gun to his own temple and pulled the trigger, but instead, it seems that the Air Force are going to go on and retrieve Woodward because they're already on the scene. And so we have all the kids that are kind of just scrambling to get out of there because they're like, oh my god, yeah, like we're we're not going to try to get arrested. We're not going to go to jail for the rest of our lives. We're not even going to say that we're going to be involved in any of this. So Charles, out of everybody, is taking the words of Woodward to heart, and he, of course, is to have everybody like radio silenced, and we already have Alice who's like, I regret ever doing this, as she's just kind of driving everybody home in this car of hers. So we of course have Joe that's radio frequencing Charles with this walking, kind of talking to him about it the next day. And Charles is like, hey, somebody could pick up on this frequency. Like, shush. So we end up also going further into this film, and we're starting to have the deputy realizing that they're getting these weird calls. And so the deputy is starting to realize that this one kind of car dealership guy named Izzy, of course, a lot of people probably know him from doing the voices from The Simpsons. Izzy is to mention to the deputy that his engines are all kind of missing from his car. And the deputy goes further and further into all these kind of specific items being missing from their places. And eventually the deputy will get to a town meeting where there's a woman mentioning like, hey, my microwave's missing, my this, my that's missing. And so, but before that happens, we have the sheriff that's going on to this convenience store, and the convenience store is called Kelvin's. So the sheriff Pruitt, who before he was to go to this convenience store was talking to the deputy and telling him to take some time off, that he should probably take like a decent like 2-week vacation, go on and like spend some time at home, hug his son, and and the deputy's like, well, I don't want to do that. I just want to keep on working. So the sheriff just goes off onto this convenience store. And so speaking of Deputy Jackson, we had Deputy Jackson wanting to go on and just ship Joe off to this summer school for 6 weeks so we can kind of just get rid of him. And Joe has no real interest in going on and doing this summer school kind of project. Instead, like Joe is like, well, but like my friends need to help me film this movie, and Jackson doesn't understand that. He's just like, like, you know what? Like, I get it that like you like to do this movie stuff, but like, like, come on, like you're not doing anything that's like a real, so, and that's usually with a lot of parents that just don't get what people are doing. That happens a lot, where it's just like, well, I don't get what he's doing, but as long as he's happy, like that's all that matters. So we have, of course, the sheriff that again makes it to this convenience store is talking to this one kid, and he is to have this portable Walkman, and the sheriff's like, well, I don't know about that, like, I think that's a slippery slope once we start to get to this like portable technology and all this. So, because yeah, we're going to head that way. Everything is going to have to eventually be portable at some point. To where you can go on and just basically have a whole computer, like, in the size of a tablet at some point. Really, for the most point. So, we have the sheriff that is, of course, making his way out to his car, and all of a sudden there is to be uh, this kind of wind that is kind of picking up. So all of a sudden the convenience store clerk is find out that this police car is kind of rocking back and forth, and we find that the sheriff has gone missing. And not only that, but there's like a lot of destruction that's going on also. We can probably just kind of sweep it under the rug and say that it's some kind of bad weather, and the sheriff might have been trying to do something along with that. But the further and further we go on and have all these missing items, the more things aren't really adding up to some bad weather. Not only that, but we have also Joe that is to have a missing dog called Lucy. And so Joe goes on and is trying to pin this lost dog piece of paper onto this this bulletin board like thing, and he finds out that there's a number of people that have all put their lost dog kind of pieces of paper upon this. So like, it's like, yeah, why are all these dogs going on and missing? Come to find out that all these dogs have decided to run off to make it into the next state because they know something is going on. And so all of a sudden one of the officers is coming to Deputy Jackson and telling him, hey, like, it seems that someone was to find your dog, but it wasn't even in like the same part of town. Like, it seems that these dogs are like trying to get out of town somewhere. It's crazy. And Jackson is like, yeah, this is really weird. So all of a sudden the US Air Force is to come in, and they're wanting to go and take this train and take everything, take all the Rubik's Cubes. And we had, of course, Joe, who is to keep one of these Rubik's Cubes on him to just kind of keep as this goofy souvenir. So these guys are all like boxing up all these things, going and grabbing Woodward to then kind of put him into a room. And so we have Colonel Nellick, who's asking Woodward, hey, just hey, then he leaves. That's all he does. The Colonel goes and speaks with Woodward and is like, tell me everything. Tell me the truth. Like, I want to know it all. Like, you need to tell me. And so Woodward is going on and not really wanting to divulge anything. And so we have these Air Forcemen that go on and just kill Woodward because he was technically helping out the alien character. So it's like, well, hey, since you were helping him out, you're going to die here. Because if you're not going to tell us the truth or tell us anything, we're just going to kill you off. So, like, heaven forbid you just kind of chuck him away in some prison cell somewhere and make his life miserable until he divulges information. No, like, so, because we find out Woodward is having some kind of, like, psychic connection between this alien And so Woodward is actually trying to help this thing because because he understands it. And so Nellick is basically wanting to kill that connection by killing Woodward. So nobody knows for the longest time that there is an alien menacing thing upon this town. And we at one point have an electrician that is trying to clean or trying to like fix something, some kind of um, like power thing outside. And so all of a sudden he's going on and he's kind of using this kind of this truck that is to kind of be this kind of crane thing that kind of lifts him up here. So all of a sudden he's just kind of looking and we just see these kind of these cars and all these items just being flung in the air, and we have this kind of construction worker or this electrician who's just kind of looking. He's like, okay, what the is this? So instead of just going back in his vehicle and wanting to get the heck out of here, heck out of Dodge, he really doesn't understand what's going on, so he tries to lift up his machine a little bit higher, raise it a little bit higher so he can kind of see what the heck is going on. And so this lands this man, of course, having this alien come from behind and grab him and take him. And so we assume that all these people that are being grabbed by this alien are all being killed, but we would actually find out differently. We would find out later in the film that this alien is going and collecting all these people and just kind of tying them up at this cemetery garage like hideout that this alien has with all of this with all this equipment that he's trying to combine together to use in some goofy manner of sorts. So we are, of course, having Charles consistently throughout this film continuing to try and use all the things that is going on with this town as their benefit. And so Charles, of course, is wanting to kind of have this group go back to that train accident so they can kind of film more. And Charles is wanting Alice to kind of work with them, and Joe's like, I don't think she has any interest in working with us. Because the further and further we go onto this film, we either have Lewis or we either have Lewis or we either have Deputy Jackson that is trying to separate Alice from Joe or Joe from Alice. And so when one knows about the other, that's when like we have Deputy Jackson that's grabbing Joe away from his friends, just say like, hey, like, you're not going to get involved with that Alice girl, and if that means that she's involved in your friends, well, like, then that means you're not involved with them, kind of thing. So, and Lewis tries to do that also, so, but I've already kind of said that. So anyways, but let's back it up a little bit. So it seemed that, of course, we had Alice that is not really be interested in doing this movie again, but Joe is to call her while he is at this this film developing place where Charles is bringing this film to this guy to kind of rush job fix the film. And we, of course, have this guy who is to be Donnie, who's wanting to try and get Charles's sister to date him. And so at first we think like this isn't gonna work. Like Charles is just kind of saying whatever to this guy, and so coincidentally, the further and further we get in this film, the more we realize that Donnie is going to at some point talk with Charles's sister, because Charles's sister is trying to figure out a way to manipulate Donnie into helping them out. But yeah, so Joe goes on and calls Alice, and like Alice realizes that she doesn't want to go with these guys, or her father doesn't want her to go, but she's like, well, you know what, like let's just try and figure something out. So they go to the train station, and the funny thing of it is we have every time there's a zombie in this movie, Carrie is to play the zombie every single time. Which is kind of funny because technically we have like Carrie also playing another zombie in the Dead X show, the one Netflix show. So it's kind of funny seeing that like connection here. It's like, oh my god, that's the same guy. Much older, much different colored hair, but same guy. It's kind of weird. So we have, of course, both Martin and Alice, who are kind of at this train station realizing what had happened. All of a sudden, a zombie appears, and they go on and they have to shoot this zombie. And so Carrie's to show that, you hit me in the chest, and he falls over. I'm like, that doesn't exactly kill the zombie. Which I guess, justifyingly in the later part of this movie, Martin kind of goes on, and actually the early part of the filmmaking process, but like once we get to the case, it'll be cut like a different way. Where we had Martin who's kind of struggling with Carrie's character, and he shoves them into this this wood piece that has a bunch of nails, and they cut it perfectly to where it looks like there isn't actually anything going on there. Of that Carrie's gonna get hurt and whatever, or otherwise this guy would have been dead a lot quicker in this movie. We would have never seen Carrie in this film. So we also have a moment where Joe needs to go on and look like one of these Air Force officers, because Charles is realizing that one of the actors that he was trying to get to do this role had ditched them. So Charles is saying, Joe, you're gonna have to do this Air Force character, so we can go on and continue to film this movie. So, because the Air Force are kind of in town and they're kind of packing up, and so you kind of just see a bunch of Air Force vehicles. And so Joe is going on and talking to Martin in this scene and kind of talking about what's going on. All of a sudden we have Deputy Jackson, who is to grab Joe and put him in this car. And so we have Deputy Jackson that is to try to meet with of course, Colonel Nellick here, because we have Deputy Jackson that is to go and have this kind of tent meeting with everybody in town, and we of course have Jackson finding out that one guy was to pick up all these radio signals from the Air Force, and we have Jackson that's asking for these frequencies. And so Jackson goes to the police station and is having guys going on and listening to this Air Force frequency to see what's going on. And so we have it where they're going and talking about some mission that they're having them do, uh, which is actually going to have them trying to evacuate this town by there being a fire in this town to just kind of push these guys out of their own town. So everybody is supposedly being evacuated because there's a forest fire, and so we come to find out that the Air Force themselves had caused this fire, and so the deputy is going on and speaking with Colonel Nellick and is asking him about this whole protocol that they're doing, which really just lands, of course, the deputy to later in the film just get arrested because it seems like he's creating problems for this Air Force. And we just have it where Deputy Jackson is consistently trying to like meet up with Colonel Nellick, and because it seems like he's getting answers, and so the Air Force doesn't like that. So they're shoving Deputy Jackson into this one room, and Deputy Jackson is going on and just saying like, "Hey man, like I have to go to the bathroom. Can't you just let me go to the bathroom?" So this guy kind of follows Deputy Jackson to this bathroom, and of course we have it where Jackson goes on and knocks this guy out, puts on his clothes, and is to make it to the place where everybody is kind of being evacuated into this one part of town. So more and more we start to have certain people that are to make it to this quarantined off location. So at one point we have Alice that is to make it home, and so she's talking to Lewis, and Lewis is like, "Hey, like where did you go?" Because Alice was wanting to spend time with of course Joe, and so she kind of sneaks into his house to just kind of spend some time with him and talk about things, because Alice noticed that Joe had this locket that he was kind of holding on to, but when they had that kind of train accident, she noticed that, and so she asked him about it. And this is right around the time that they had this like power outage. So Joe tells Alice what it all had happened. Uh, that luckily they were to be able to get this locket, even though Joe's mother had horrifically died, to the point that Joe's mother had a coffin, but there was nothing to bury. That's how bad this whole thing was. So, but luckily they were to rescue this locket, and so now Joe has it to just come kind of remember his mother by, as well as this kind of film that goes on and is playing once the electricity comes back on. So Alice and Joe are kind of watching this projection of some kind of old home videos, and like I guess we kind of get probably where like Joe gets his like filmmaking itch from, is probably from his mother's side probably. So so Alice comes home to talk to Lewis, and Lewis is just thinking about Alice's mother, how of course she was to run off. And so it's like, well, hey, you might as well just be just like your mother. Just run off just like your mother. And Alice is like, okay, fine. And so she gets on her bike and starts biking away. And so Lewis is like, oh no, I didn't mean that. Like, so Lewis drives after her, like, trying to make amends, trying to apologize. And so all of a sudden we have it where Alice ends up getting captured by this alien after Lewis is to go on and accidentally crash his car. And so Lewis is to try to get out of his car, trying to find out where Alice is because her bike is there, but she isn't. And so Lewis realizes that this alien had nabbed her because he got to see some kind of something. Just like, oh, okay, so like there's an alien in this town. So Lewis goes to the quarantined off place, and it seems that people are just continuing to hand Lewis these pills, these medications. And Lewis is like, hey, I saw what I saw. So we start to get more and more people from town making their way to this quarantined off place. And so Joe and Charles are to get their film back that I guess was rushed. And while they start to like showcase this film, they realize, oh my god, like we have like evidence of an alien in this clip, this camera. And it's like, oh my god. So now we go on and have Joe and Charles make it to this quarantine like place where they go and they talk to Lewis about what he had seen, and Joe's like, I completely believe you. And so because these kids are going in and like they're breaking into the school to try and break into Mr. Woodward's office to try to get information on him, and they're finding all of these like old clips, and they're finding out all this information about Woodward, which all of a sudden is to get these kids arrested technically by the Air Force and put into this bus, but we'll get there. So we have Joe, after he goes on and talks to Lewis, we have Charles's sister that's being persuaded to talk to Donnie, to have Donnie drive them to this school to get all this stuff on Woodward. And like I said, the Air Force kind of barges in, arrests all these kids, takes them into this bus. And so while these guys are driving this bus, we have, of course, the alien, which he actually has a name also, called Cooper, that is to crash this bus. And so we get this crazy moment where we, of course, have Colonel Nellick, who's telling Overmeyer, kind of his one of his men, like, oh yeah, you want to go out there and just tranquilize dart this thing and we'll call it a day? And this guy's like, well, where exactly do you want me to go to tranquilize this? Immediately, this guy tries to get out of this bus to immediately be taken, as well as a number of these kind of Air Force guys are immediately just like, they're gonna get freaking taken or killed. And so Colonel Nellick is realizing, like, yeah, like we're all just gonna get killed. We're all gonna die here, because none of the military guys are to be where any of those other people are. They're all to be killed off, because of course they would be. Because we find out that the military, through Woodward's film, we find out the military had some time ago found this alien in its ship, and they decided to just kind of keep this alien kind of locked away under wraps. And so Woodward all of a sudden was trying to communicate with it, and the alien just kind of touches him, And all of a sudden he's like, okay, or so. But Woodward is want to help out the alien to try to just have him like, hey man, just leave, like just get out of here, like that's all it really wants. So we have the kids realizing in this bus that they could go on and break one of the windows to try and escape from this bus. So they're like trying to break this window, and so all these kids make it out of the this bus, and so they're like scrambling to try to get out of here. All of a sudden, Donnie is driving like a madman, and he's like, "Hey man, like I thought you guys were dead," and so they're going on and like, hey man, like we like let's get all into this car, let's get the heck out of here. And Donnie's like, hey man, I'm stoned, like I'm stoned on my gourd, because all the crazy stuff that had happened. So all of a sudden we have like Joe who's driving this car now, and so he's driving this car. They have to park the car because there's just tanks all over the place. So these kids are just on foot, just trying to make it out of this town. All of a sudden, like these tanks are going crazy and going wild. Like a war is broken loose. Like it's kind of interesting that we had one of the people in the town that was consistently blaming like the Soviets or blaming Russia from what's going on here. And I'm like, well, yeah, like of course in every single like story, like look at Indiana Jones. How many several different sequels of that was there something about the Germans for some goofy reason that didn't make sense to me? It's like it could just be anybody. Like it doesn't have to be the Russians. So so we push on here, and so we have Martin that is to injure himself, and so Charles is hanging back to have both Carrie and both Joe kind of have to go to the cemetery to just kind of figure out what's going on with this alien and try to rescue some people along the way. So both Joe and Carrie run off, and I'm hoping by now that I've kind of technically covered in a roundabout way most of this film. I know there's a lot of bits, there's a lot of parts, and there's an easy way to get easily confused with this film, uh, especially with the way of which that I approach it. But like, so I'm just kind of recanting anything that I'm to just remember. So Joe and Carrie make it to this cemetery, and there's to be these kind of garage doors that are to lead to this like underground hiding place that the alien is to be at. And so Joe finds that all these people are kind of like tied up or kind of cocooned, hanging upside down. And we immediately have Joe's first concern is to save Alice. And he like smacks her awake. And then he goes on and is to save like some rando woman that's close by. And like the woman is just kind of talking about like what she was doing last. And then Joe goes on and saves the sheriff, and the sheriff's like, "Hey, let's all get out of here! Come on!" I'm just like, "Wait a minute! Like we can't just easily have this all get resolved right now with you guys just running off." So really, what happens is we have the Cooper alien that's chasing after these people, and we finally just have Joe who is wanting to talk with Cooper and say like, "Hey man, like you can leave now," because Alice is going and she has had like by touching this alien she realizes like what the alien feels, and that this alien just wants to go home, like it doesn't want to hurt any more people, it just wants to go home. So Joe's like, well, yeah, like I get it that you're scared, like I get it that you're afraid, Like, just, hey, just go on home. We'll let you go home. Just go home. So we, of course, have this shot of the water tower from before in this film. And we had Joe's little Rubik's Cube that goes through one of his walls in his room to make it to where it's stuck to this water tower. And so now all of these metal items are to start to get stuck to this water tower. And so everybody is just kind of watching on, just kind of seeing all these like metal pieces being attached to this water tower. To even there's to be this Air Force guy's gun that like he's kind of holding onto this gun, flying off with it. So all these metal pieces are getting attached to this water tower, and so now most of the kids are making it to this spot. And some people are asking, I think Alice is kind of asking Joe, it's like, what do you think that this alien is doing? And Joe's like, well, hey, he's creating a model. He's trying to figure out how to put all of these pieces together for him to make a ship for him to get the heck out of here. So we have the alien going and figuring out how to put a new ship together so he can just get the heck out of here to fly off back to where his homeland is. And then the movie just kind of ends with both Lewis and the deputy trying to desperately drive off to find their kids, and Lewis telling Jackson here, like, well, hey, like, this was all just an accident, like, I'm sorry. And so we have Jackson, we have Lewis going and meeting up with their kids, and they hug them both, and Jackson is telling Joe, it's like, well, hey, like, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm gonna save you, I'm gonna help you, kind of thing, like, kind of like, hey, I'm here now, like, I get it. Because Deputy Jackson was just kind of so wrapped up in all his work to the point where we had Jackson, like, with all of his officers all in Jackson's home, and Jackson tells Joe, it's like, well, hey, like, I saved you a couple slices of pizza, and one of the officers is like, I'm sorry, I ate all that. And so Joe's like, well, I'll figure out something to eat in between takes. I'll find out something to eat while I'm not on camera. So yeah, so that's how the movie is just kind of the finish off, and then the end credit scene is to showcase the case, the movie that they were trying to make, and how all those little scenes were to make that old fashioned looking movie, and so it kind of created this interesting end product. And so we have Charles who's trying to say, it's like, well, hey, like, thank you, and I hope that this is a consideration to go into the next festival. As we have all of a sudden Alice who's trying to eat, of course, Charles, and then she goes to the camera, she's like, ah, and the movie just stops. So with that said, I think I'm going to stop. I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.